of our draft week coverage from the beautiful Rock Creek Cattle Company, Deer Lodge, Montana. Dave Gosher along with Gary Lawless here today as the Golden Knights and the rest of the NHL gearing up for the first round of the NHL draft. That'll be a little bit later on today. Gary, of course, will have all the coverage, 4 o'clock Pacific time, full draft coverage of round number 1. And, it's getting more and more exciting here. First round and so much work that these that scouts have put in, and virtual drafting this year, of course, but should be a lot of fun later on today.
Yeah, for sure. And the rumor mill is cranked right up at this moment. So lots of names out there. Steven Stamkos is making the rounds, and there's reports on a number of Golden Knights, possibly teams having interest in them. So lots to unpack here over the next hour.
It'll be interesting to see. You've got the draft here today and tomorrow, free agency that begins on Friday, and it is a window, Gary, even in normal times. Let's say the draft and then free agency kicked in July 1, where you see a lot of action and a lot of activity, teams trying to get under the cap implications, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, well, and the cap this year, staying flat due to the agreement made between the NHL and the NHLPA to kind of weather the storm here of COVID, $81.5 million. So you can get over it by as much as 10% during the off season, but there's a date. I'm not sure what date it is this year because we don't know when the season's going to start, but you have to be compliant prior to the season starting. So some deck chairs are going to get shuffled here in the next couple of days.
We're expected in a couple of moments to be joined by Brian Burke from Sportsnet in Canada. Also, Sam Cosentino is going to join us a little bit later on from TSN, Draft Guru in Canada, as well as so much work has gone into these couple of days. And speaking of Brian Burke, he joins us right now over the phone. Brian, thanks so much for joining us here. Dave Gosher and Gary Lawless. As we get geared up for draft day, Brian, you've been at the helm of a handful of NHL teams. What is this day like for a general manager and for a hockey operations staff leading into the first round of the draft?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on, Gosh. It's a big day, obviously, and it's a big day for the scouts in particular because they work 363 days for these 2 days. And the work they put into it, and it's lonely work, late-night drives home from junior games. And, when I used to scout a little bit, I remember driving from Brandon back to Winnipeg to catch an early flight the next day, minus 30 the whole way. So they're the backbone of the business, and these are the 2 days where they really get to shine, so it's special for them. For a GM, it's nerve-wracking. It depends on where you pick, too. If you got a high pick, the risk is real great, and only about 60% of players selected in the first round play 200 NHL games. So you get a pick, and it's a high pick. You want to get it right.
You had one of the biggest draft day maneuvers in the history of the NHL, acquiring the rights to both to the top 2 picks so that you could select Daniel and Henrik Sedin back to back. What was that like, Brian?
Well, that wasn't one of the biggest. That was the biggest.
All right.
Piece to do here. Well, what made that possible was, first off, the credit should go to the right guys, not to me. Okay, so Mark Crawford is the one who turned them into players. But the Swedish scout that identified them early on and said, we've got to get these guys. You got to remember, the World Juniors that year, they won second and third in scoring. It was in Winnipeg that year. But they weren't impressive against Canada and the U.S. And I left that tournament saying that we're going to trade our pick, which is devastating to the scouts. We're going to have a top 5 pick. The first round was terrible that year. And that's the only reason that we were able to make the deal. But our Swedish scout, I'm drawing a blank on his name here, he was a great center for us too. I'll think of it. Anyway, he said early on, you got to get these 2. So the World Championship roster came out that year, Thomas Stradin. And the World Championship roster came out that year, or the World Championships, not World Junior, and the Sedins were picked to play. So I remember seeing the roster come across my fax machine early in the morning, and I thought, well, who got hurt? Like, no one takes 18-year-olds to that tournament. Even now, it's very rare. Like a Capo Caco went as an 18-year-old, but that's really rare. And so these kids, Thomas Green called me, and he said they made the team. I said, well, who got hurt? And he said, no one. They're on their legit. You got to come watch them play. So the championships were in Norway. And I wasn't planning on going, but I said, okay, I'll come over and watch him play, and then we'll drop this nonsense. And I'm like, how do you expect me to get 2 picks in the top 5 anyway? No one's ever done that. So anyhow, I went and watched them play, and the very first game, very first shift, you could see that twin thing they had. Like Daniel would throw a pass to it wasn't within 20 feet of anyone, an open area of ice, and Henrik could skate right onto it. Like he could see it. And so I said, I got to get him, and we were able to pull it off.
Brian Burke joining us from Sportsnet in Canada. Burkey, obviously round 1 here today. Then we have rounds 2 through 7 coming up tomorrow. Could you speak to the value of drafting well later on in the draft? That obviously you've got Alexis Lafreniere that's going to go number 1 here today, and we know the history of number 1 picks and the impact they can have. But, by my count, Tampa Bay just won the Stanley Cup, and 13 players on their roster were drafted by the Lightning. Could you speak to that and how much that is the lifeblood of your organization, not just the first round, but those ensuing rounds if you can do it well?
Well, it's critical, and you're right about the composition of their team. There were a lot of later picks, and some of them weren't drafted by them, but a lot of them were. And there's 2 steps to it. You got to draft well, and then you got to develop well. And they used their American Hockey League team really well. They won a Calder Cup in Norfolk, and I think another one in Syracuse maybe, and they developed extremely well. So Killorn came through the farm system. Tyler Johnson came through the farm system. Palat came through the farm system. So they've drafted well, but then you got to develop well, and that's where the Silver Knights are going to be so important for the Vegas Golden Knights when they're with their AHL development.
Brian, this year with no Canadian Hockey League playoffs, no USHL playoffs, no NCAA playoffs, and maybe most importantly, no World Under-18 championships. If you're a GM, you're spending a lot of time with your NHL club. And then in the spring, when you're getting closer and closer to the draft, your scouts are telling you, depending on where you're picking, you've got to come and see this. And so you get to the Memorial Cup or you get to the Frozen Four, but you certainly go to the under-18s. What's it like for a GM today not having had the opportunity to see those final exams for this class of player?
Well, they're 2 different things. The under-18 is really critical because it's a best on best, and you want to see best on best whenever you can. And so that was a tragic loss to teams in terms of scouting. That's really a great evaluation tool. Any best-on-best tournament, under-17s, under-18s, World Junior. And so that was a critical evaluation tool lost. You also lose not best-on-best, but high-pressure situations in the playoffs, NCAA playoffs, CHL playoffs, and those opportunities were lost. So you're going to have to go based on what you saw before the league shut down and the viewings you had based on that. There's no combine this year. So it is a different way to evaluate, but I think the good teams that draft well probably had a good handle on these players before those things. They would have liked to have them, but I think it's more a luxury than a necessity.
The flat cap, I heard you talking the other day about the buyout for Henrik Lundqvist, and you said it was sad. It's like sad that because of the economics, because of COVID, and the fact that the NHL, the industry, the economics have been affected, a guy like that can't finish his career with a team that he's given so much to. Today, we're hearing that the Tampa Bay Lightning may have asked Steven Stamkos if he's willing to move. It's some of these names out there because of the salary situation. It's kind of unheard of.
Yeah, and it's, buyouts are, you talk about Alsner went on waivers, you talk about, Lundqvist going on waivers and being bought out. Those are tough discussions with your owner. You go to your owner and say, we want to sign this guy to an 8-year deal at $7 million a year, and then with 3 years left, you go back and say, now we want to buy him out. The owner doesn't say, okay, that's fine. He says, what the hell's the matter with you? You came in my office 5 years ago and begged me to sign this guy. And now we're going to eat $5 or $6 million at a time when our revenues have been slashed. But to make cap room, teams are doing it. And it is sad. It is unfortunate in Henrik Lundqvist's case that he can't finish his career as a Ranger. But that's 2020. Like, the economics of our game have changed forever. So you got a 30% rollback this year, 20% cap on escrow, which will be gone. Escrow is going to be more like 40 or 45%. So that 20 is gone. That's a rollback. and then a 10% deferral. So every player in the league's taking a 30% rollback this year. And my guess is that deferred money is going to go away too, because I think the economic picture is very bleak.
Berkey,
so you're
I
looking
know
at a major rollback each year.
Well, and to that point, Berkey, it's been reported that evidently now the NHL is targeting January 1st as opposed to December 1st for the start of the next season. Where do you fall on all this? Are you confident they can get in a full season, 82 games, even if they start Jan 1, full playoffs? Where do you sit on the topic?
No, I don't think they're going to play 82 games. I think January 15th is probably a more realistic start date. I think it's going to be really hard to play 82 games, and I think the league would probably be better off trying to play 60 or 65, whatever the right number is. Be an even number, obviously, and they're going to have to change the divisions so that the travel costs are reduced. You're going to see a more compressed schedule, more back-to-backs. Teams aren't going to come into Vegas and play once. They're going to come in and play twice. And that's going to be because the cost of air travel, it's $30,000 a block hour for Air Canada jets. So a 3-hour flight, if Calgary comes to Vegas, it's 3 hours. That's $90,000 in airfare. There's no reason to do that twice. They're going to come in and play twice instead of coming in and play once and then coming back. So it's going to have a very different look, and I don't see how we play 82 games, but the league has impressed me with the way they've been able to handle these problems. You're going to have more geographical grouping of teams, different divisions, and look at travel. When your buildings are full and the cap's at $81 million and everyone's making money, the revenue sharing plan in the league allows even the weakest markets to do okay. Those days are gone after this year. So they're going to have to look at the line item cost of travel as a significant thing that has to be addressed.
Berkey, last quick one for you before we let you go. We mentioned, obviously your history in running 5 different NHL teams. We love your work in the media. But do you miss the adrenaline rush that comes with days like this approaching the first round of a draft?
I thought it would. I don't so much. I did my first year out. The first draft I did, I missed it. But I miss being around the guys more, being around the players more, having a cup of coffee in the morning before practice, talking to them. But, yeah, I missed draft day a little bit, and I missed trade deadline a little bit, and I'll get those both this week.
Well, when I
Free agent frenzy on Friday.
When I texted you last night, you said you're pushing it, bud. So we're letting you out right now. I've kept you under the allotted time, and I really appreciate it. I know it's a busy day. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Yeah, well, you're pretty greedy. You got Sammy coming on next.
That's
so
right.
Your pushing is right.
Berkey, anybody born in Rhode Island has a lot going for them right off the bat. So thanks for joining us.
Hey, Ghost, you know something? I went to Providence College. It's about 1,000 yards from the hospital where I was born.
They should never have let you off the island. They should have kept you there forever.
Berkey, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Brian Burke joining us from Sportsnet.
And Brian's colleague at Sportsnet, Sam Cosentino, is going to join us next. Sam is, for football fans, he's a Mel Kiper type guy, a draft expert. He spends the entire year watching games, much like Craig Button at TSN. He's a guy, he knows every player in the draft. He's probably seen, a majority of the North American players in a year when there's a World Junior and an under 18. He would have seen all of the European players as well, and doing a ton of work for NHL Network. He's very good at his job.
Brian Burke was brought to you by NextGen, which protects this fortress, an official Golden Knights alarm company. We're at Rock Creek Cattle Company for draft coverage this week. Round 1 later today, rounds 2 through 7. Tomorrow we'll have it covered for you, soup to nuts. And coming up next, as Gary said here on Nighttime at Noon, Sam Cosentino, draft guru up in Canada, joins us nighttime at noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas.
Tom Brady and the Bucs travel to
we're in beautiful Henderson, and we're at the site of what used to be the pavilion and is now going to be the Henderson Event Center, which would be the new home of the Henderson Silver Knights. And of course, a lot of pride from the organization's perspective. This is a tremendous partnership between the Vegas Golden Knights, our American Hockey League team, the Silver Knights, and the city of Henderson. And this is the beginning phase of what we think will be a really special facility that'll open up in early spring of 2022. Well, for the first part of the process was actually the demolition. So we had the actual pavilion site that was here, the pavilion structure. So we had to take that structure down and then ultimately start the process of grading, excavation, and that's really what you're seeing going on right now. And then give it about 4 weeks, we'll actually start physical construction on the site. And like I said, it'll be about 18 months of actual construction, and it's going to be a great place for families, not only in here in Henderson, but throughout the valley to come to events. There'll be a lot of great events in addition to the American Hockey League. Fans are going to love it. It's great hockey, very high level, and it comes at a great family price. Home means Henderson.
The Vegas Golden Knights are proud to select from UNLV Bobby James.
Bobby, get in.
Bobby, time for dinner.
Welcome back to Rock Creek Cattle Company in Deer Lodge, Montana. Day 2 of our draft coverage. Golden Knights, right now anyways, 29th pick in the first round of the draft coming up later on today. So we'll have it covered for you. Dave Gosher along with Gary Lawless at nighttime at noon. And our next guest is Sam Cosentino, draft guru for Sportsnet in Canada. Sam's appearance brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com to see how much you could save. Sam, Dave, and Gary in Montana, thanks for taking the time here. What's going on today? It's a quiet time for you. I'm sure you're pretty just hanging around doing a whole lot of nothing.
So it's true, you guys are at the ranch that I'm looking at videos of online, eh?
We are here.
You know what? Leave it to Gary to get that sorted out. Like, that is unbelievable. The guy's sipping a beer over there and just hanging out, having a grand old time.
I don't know if that's,
sure, Dave.
that's beer. That could be scotch in that coffee. I don't know what's in that cup over there, to be honest with you, Sam. Hey,
so disrespectful.
Yeah, that might be later. That might be later today. Sam, what's this day like for you? You know, I watched your, you had your draft that you posted earlier today. The whole first round, 1 through 31. But could you maybe speak to all the, what this leading up to this day looks like for you and all the work that goes into it?
In a typical year, it basically starts with the Hlinka Gretzky, and you get your baseline for all the players, even those that are high-end internationally. And so that's kind of the starting point. We didn't have that opportunity, didn't present itself for the 03 class, but that's where it goes from there. And then you look at the World Juniors. Of course, I do games at the CHL, so that allows me to get in sometimes a day early or leave a day later to be able to catch a game or practice or meet up with someone important to talk to. And then it's emails, texts, phone calls, all kinds of different conversations that you're having with scouts, you're having with general managers, assistant general managers, all kinds of different people just to try and piece it all together. And then for me, it's watching video. But I like to use the baseline of having my own eyes first and then kind of draw a conclusion on a player and then corroborate that with what the scouts who do it professionally for a living have to say. So that's kind of how it goes about for me, and then you piece it together towards the end when the phone really starts to heat up.
We don't spend a ton of time on this during the year. We're, kind of focused on the games, the Golden Knights games and the NHL. And then when we start to kind of, start to pick up information on this, I called a scout a little while ago and I said, whose list is good? And he said, well, Bobby Mack's list is good and this list is good. And then he said, Sam Cosentino really puts in the work. He's in all the rinks. You see him around, and his list is one of the very best. So I wanted to mention that to you, and that's that's part of the reason why we're having you on the show. But it's become an industry for you where this is this is what you do. You do those CHL games, and then this is the biggest day of the year for you.
Well, it's a huge compliment, so I appreciate you passing that along to me, because I do feel like I work hard at it. But it is a labor of love for sure, and especially with the time that we're in now, and the Quebec Major Junior League sort of starting, but not really. It's allowed me to really kind of be a diversion from what's going on in the world, and I absolutely love the work. I love the phone calls. I love the conversations. I love being told I'm an idiot and I'm wrong. I also like to hear this kind of stuff you say. But you know what, Gary? Like, doing CHL games doesn't have quite the prominence, obviously, as the NHL, and that doesn't bother me one bit. I love my gig. I wouldn't trade my gig for the world. But getting the additional kind of buzz, if you will, with the NHL draft, it's huge for me, and it's a kind of a perfect fit for what I do, because the CHL, provides so many players to the NHL that it's just that natural fit. So I'm really blessed to have the job I have. I love doing it. I'm so happy that they trusted me 6 years ago with these responsibilities for the draft, and I hope I can continue throughout the duration of our contract with the NHL.
Well, I can remember we were both kind of breaking in. I was covering the Manitoba Moose in the American Hockey League, and you were doing some stuff on the Toronto Marlies, I believe, and that's when we first started to become friends. And it's a long road, Sam, but it's a good one. What kind of player is Vegas going to get if they stay at 29?
Yeah, so with not another until the third round, an option might be to trade back and maybe acquire a second-round pick, because I do believe this thing goes pretty deep here into the second round. So if that pick is kept, there'll be a couple of options. There'll be some defensemen there, but all those defensemen seem to have some warts to them, so I don't know if that's a road that you'd want to go down. In terms of the forward group, there's a list of Brendan Brisson, Pat Sun, really good in the USHL this year. Jake Neighbors is a guy I like, and I think I pegged going to Vegas. Western Hockey League guy with a kind of a third-line basement, second-line potential, but one of those energy guys, likes to get in your face. I think the skating could improve a little bit on the part of Jake, but you're getting a wonderful character human being, and I always put a lot of credence into what the character of the player is. But there'll be some guys down there. Tyson Forster is a true sniper, plays with the Barrie Colts, excellent one-timer, dangerous in the power play, has some size. Again, the skating a bit of an issue, so it doesn't necessarily fit with what you're doing in there in Vegas and how the Golden Knights like to play. But that's an area that can improve. So there's just a couple of names that I think would be available there. Jan Mishak out of Hamilton might be another guy who they're looking at as well, with some big offensive upside.
What is your view of Bobby Lowe's, Scott Luce, and the amateur staff in Vegas?
Well, I've known those guys a long time, and I see them on the road everywhere. Bruno Campese is the same sort of thing, and obviously with the late addition of Brad McEwen, I think that there's some really amazing people that are in that group. Aaron Janelle, I run into him all the time, so I love the fact that when you see people a lot, it tells me everything about the kind of work that they're putting into the job. I know those guys have a passion. Obviously, it starts with Kelly, who has to make those hires, and then it trickles down from there. So I know what kind of expectations Kelly has. I've done some Brandon Wheat Kings games in the past and been called to the mat by him on a couple of occasions because of, making sure that I walk in there knowing my stuff. So I have a lot of respect for the staff and the job that they do and the hard work that they put into it.
Well, you're in good company, Sam. Krim calls Gary to the carpet all the time, so he's used to it. He's used
daily.
To it.
I don't know who the guy was in Brandon that took the heat from him, but I'd like to tell that guy that I know how he feels.
Yeah, there you go. Sam Cosentino joining us from Sportsnet in Canada, draft analyst. Sam, the consensus number one pick, Alexis Lafreniere, expected to go to the Rangers here later on tonight. Could you speak to just what a special talent this young man is?
Dave, he comes in with a late birthday, so that's afforded him 3 years essentially in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. He started his career at 15, put up 42 goals. Everyone knew that was going to be a big part of his game. Next year, he added that layer of playmaking where he became that dual threat guy. And this year, he kind of put the whole package together. More consistent of a player, adding that physical edge, World Junior MVP, over 2 points per game in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. So, this guy is the entire package. And I often get asked if there's a comparable to him. I think we're going to be looking at this guy in about 7 or 8 years and saying he's like Alexis Lafreniere in that he can do it all, play with a little bite to his game, and still produce at a high level. So I don't really know if I have that NHL comparable for you, but I do like what he brings to the table.
Sam, where do you see the future here in terms of the CHL? We touched earlier in the show that the NHL now is looking at January 1st as a potential start date for next season. Where does it all sit? What does your crystal ball tell you about, the CHL and where they may go next season?
Well, as it stands right now, Dave, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League is playing in 2 markets, in Quebec City and in Blainville, which is close to Montreal. They've been shut down, so that's an adjustment they're going to have to make. The Ontario Hockey League has a December 1st start date scheduled, and the Western League a December 4th start scheduled. I don't believe they're going to be able to meet that timeline, and I think the best thing to do would be, hey, they're going to play the World Juniors in a bubble. We know that. Let's get the kids back from Christmas, give them some time here to kind of settle in. Maybe they can get tested and have a baseline from there. Then maybe get into some 4-on-4 stuff, and then progress maybe into 1 or 2 exhibition games and try to shoot for a 50-game schedule that would be played regionally. And then, just kind of take it as it is, understand that it's a different year and a different time, and try and do the best in that regard. But, it's really important, Dave, for the National Hockey League that these leagues play. Of course, the safety is the number one concern, but if there's a way to do it in a safe manner, it's important because this is the future of the National Hockey League. And it's not just the CHL, but all of these junior leagues, the USHL, whether it's the NCAA, this is where the players come from to support the NHL. And so it's important that these leagues play, but not more important than the health of everybody involved.
Last one for you, Sam. If Lafreniere is all alone by himself in that first layer, how big is the second layer, that next grouping of players, and how many groupings are there in the first round?
Yeah, great question, Gary. So I would look at the top 3, sort of in a layer, and with Alexi leading the way. Okay. I really like Tim Stutzle. I really like Quentin Byfield. I think he's got massive potential. He's a little bit younger than the other guys. And then from there, I believe that kind of extends down into the 10 or 12 range. Anton Lundell's really started to play well. Jack Quinn is in that conversation. Drysdale, Sanderson, Rossi, Perfetti, Holtz. I mean, that list is really, really long. Then after that, you get into those middle 10 picks that I think are really good players, where each of them is going to have something that pops in terms of its National Hockey League potential, but some efficiencies, fixable things. And then once you get past 25, the list probably really extends to 50, Gary.
Really?
And you wouldn't be surprised with any one of those names from 25 to 50 being called early or late.
Excellent. Well, we're in Montana, so we should ask you real fast. Jake Sanderson, the son of Jeff Sanderson, I think this will be the highest a Montana-born player has ever gone. He's a top 10 guy. What jumps out for you about him?
I like the defensive foundation he put into his game early in the year. I like the fact that this guy's a natural-born leader. His teammates defer to him, so the character is really good. The size at 6'3", which is now over 200 pounds, that will play as we just saw and you guys experienced in the NHL playoffs. But what was important to me for Jake, from about the January 20th, 21st date, the BioSteel All-American game, he was dead brilliant in that game. I mean, lights out, MVP of that game, no question. From that point on, he accepted the responsibility of being more assertive offensively. His last 12 games, 11 points, and I think that opened some people's eyes, maybe thinking now that he's not just that stay-at-home guy, but there is that two-way potential with him, and that's why I have him just a shade ahead of Jamie Drysdale, but not by much.
Sam, thanks for joining us here on what certainly is a busy day for you. We appreciate it very much.
Okay, Dave, Gary, enjoy the beers and the ranch, guys?
we like Scotch and wine, Dave. Sam.
We'll
Sam and Dave. That's that's a band.
That's right. Well,
there you go.
We'll hoist one in your honor.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
See ya, Sammy.
Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. Maybe a cigar too. Just rub it right in.
That could be. That could be.
There was
arranged.
one of those last night on our patio. Yeah.
Sam Cosentino joining us from Sportsnet in Canada. Terrific job with his draft analyst work. If you go on sportsnet.ca, he's got the whole first round video. He's got the whole thing. It's probably a 35-minute presentation.
He's not playing.
He's
become
phenomenal.
There's there's three guys in Canada that everyone looks to. Mackenzie, Button, and Sam is now right up there with him.
Yeah,
Good for him.
Terrific job by Sam, and we appreciate his time. So we continue along nighttime at noon. Dave Gosher, Gary Lawless coming to you from Rock Creek Cattle Company in Montana. Lots more to come on a busy day with the first round of the NHL draft coming up later on tonight. We'll be back in a moment on Fox Sports Las Vegas.
Ahí viene el robo, se viene Roy, Roy lo tiene, Roy. Nicolás Roy con el primero, creo que en su carrera en esta temporada con los Vegas Golden Knights. Del otro lado está Cody Glass, no conectan con él, se suelta el puck, recupera el equipo de Vegas Golden Knights. Ese es Pacioretty, costado izquierdo, el pase. ¡Gol! ¡Gol! ¡Golazo de Cody Glass!
Y se vuelven a equivocar en la salida,
Ahí está,
lo regalan
la
otra
portería.
vez. ¡Cae! Le quedó otra vez como regalito de Año Nuevo a Mark Stone y era la tercera ocasión que el equipo se equivoca. Me refiero a los Dogs, se equivocaban en la salida, regalan por tercera vez el puck enfrente de la portería y eso obviamente debido a la buena marca, la buena presión que estaban haciendo los delanteros del equipo de Vegas Golden Knights, pero ahora sí la aprovechó Mark Stone adentro que estamos cenando 1-1 el marcador.
Súmete que te quedó jabón, digo el señor Mark Stone. Y ahí estamos 1-1, señores. Nuevamente jugando el equipo de Vegas Golden Knights frente al portero, va a quedar arriba el post, a dos tiempos.
Bueno, ahí está Marche. Marche. Marcó el sexto, damas y caballeros. Y lo que había se acabó.
Excelente.
Lo decíamos.
El equipo de los Vegas Golden Knights. Faltó mandarlo más lejos. ¡Disparo! Y pegó en el poste de Marc Castro.
No.
¡Esa estuvo épica! Marc-Andre Fleury.
No.
¡Su majestad Fleury!
We continue along with nighttime at noon from beautiful Montana. Dave Gosher along with Gary Lawless on the radio side. Gary, we had a little Van Halen coming back from the break situation, and we play that. Why? You told me a moment ago. What did you just read on the Twitters?
Eddie Van Halen has lost his battle with cancer at the age of 65.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's and a lengthy battle, right?
Yeah,
If
he's
I
had it for a
remember
while.
right.
Yeah. One of the best rock guitarists of our teenage years, Dave. I'm a little older than you, but
Yeah, but same wheelhouse.
Yeah,
for sure. Did you ever see Van Halen in concert?
I didn't. I do have a Van Halen story though. Alex Van Halen, his brother, bought a cottage on Lake Muskoka, which is in Ontario, where I grew up, and he bought a cottage across the bay from my buddy's mom and dad, and they had a boathouse out in front of his place, and we were all, 19 or so, and we liked to stay up late, and we stayed up till around 4 in the morning, and the next day, a beautiful cigarette boat pulled up in front of the cottage, and we looked down, and sure enough, it was Alex Van Halen, and he yelled at us, "Keep it down." I'm the rock star, and then roared away. It was a very good moment.
That's awesome. Al was pretty good on the drums too, but yeah,
Not bad.
sad news today. Eddie Van Halen passing away. I saw them twice. I saw the two different. I saw Van
Hagar and Van Halen.
And Van Halen. I was a bigger Van Hagar fan, to be quite honest with you.
Oh,
I'm a big Sammy fan.
You're crazy.
I know what's happening.
The first couple of Van Halen albums were just tremendous.
Yeah, they were. They were fine. And then I liked 5150.
Yeah.
OU812. There you go. So we had Sam Cosentino on here, and interesting what he talked about. So right now, the Golden Knights have 5 picks, right, coming up in the draft. They get a first at number 29. They have nothing in the second. They get a couple of thirds, a sixth, and a seventh, right? So right now, that's where it stands. But Sam's thought is they might, they could trade back and maybe try to pick up a second-round pick. He thinks from players 25 to 50, that's how deep it was, you could get a real good player in that area.
Yeah, I would prefer to see them stay in the first and then maybe use one of those picks in the third to try and move up into the second and have a first and a second, because I can remember when they didn't have a first-round draft pick, it was a real tough opening night. You just kind of sat there and wondered what was going to happen. And I think for Bobby Lowe's, Scott Luce, and the rest of their staff, having a first is important. It's I think you feel better. They only have 5 picks, but I think they feel better this year with that first than when they didn't have a first.
Well, they have the 29th one here today, and it's interesting what Sam said, that the top 3, right? You've got obviously Lafreniere going first. You've got Schutzla and Byfield, and then after that, he said maybe the next 10 to 12 players you're going to get somebody really good in there, and then. And that's what my point to Brian Burke was earlier, Gary, that, we're focusing a lot on the first round here today, quite obviously, but players you can get past that.
Mark Stone, 6th-round pick, right?
No question about
Bobby Lowe's, the chief amateur scout for the Vegas Golden Knights, was with the Ottawa Senators, and, believe it or not, had to fight to pick Mark Stone in the 6th round. Like, had to really kind of stick his neck out and say, we need to draft this guy. And it was because his skating stride was, I'll be polite, deceptive.
Yeah.
So, unorthodox.
Yeah. A work in progress.
And now he's one of the best players in the National Hockey League, one of the best players. So, listen, I think there's a few hours here, obviously, until draft time. And I think that they may turn out to be very exciting. I think that there's a lot of GMs have to make some moves. And, I think Kelly McCrimmon, after signing the contract that he did with Robin Lehner, probably has to make some moves. So whether they happen today or they happen Thursday or sometime down the road, I think on Friday when free agency opens, you really want to know what you have and where you sit with your cap. So I think if you want to get your bat off the shoulder on Friday, you've got to do some work between now and then. So I also think that the Golden Knights are in a precarious spot in that they just lost in the Western Conference Final, right? They're down to the final 4 teams. They've been there twice in the last 3 years. They're only 3 years of existence. You want to win, and you've done an interview with Bill Foley that we're gonna see down the line here, and we know that Bill wants to win Stanley Cups. So there's the window is open, and I think Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee, they are charged with keeping that window open, but also ensuring that at some point in time the team wins. Now there's 30 other guys trying to do the same thing. It's not an automatic, but recency bias can be dangerous. If you look at what just happened and you say, we're not good enough, so we've got to make changes. Did Jonathan Marchessault just have a bad playoff? Did Max Pacioretty, was he banged up to the degree that, that prevented him from getting some scoring done? Is Cody Glass, I just saw Cody, he's put on 20 pounds. Is he going to step up and give you more of what you need in your top six? Is Peyton Krebs going to be that rare guy that goes right from junior hockey into the National Hockey League and has an impact? Yeah. Like Krebs, let's talk about him for a second. Last year after the draft, Marc Bergevin, the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, his list was posted on Twitter. He had a handwritten list. That was explained to me. This is why you don't have a handwritten list, because it can end up on Twitter. Well, you know where Peyton Krebs was? 6th. Yeah. And they picked 15th. Vegas picked 17th. And I believe those are the right numbers.
That sounds right.
And when Montreal got there, they chose Cole Caulfield because Krebs was hurt. They said, why draft the guy who's injured and we're not sure about him. And the Golden Knights, when they got, I think that if we could have really looked inside the mind of Bobby Lowe's, he would have been dancing a jig. Yeah. And they didn't waste any time. They selected the player, and now he's healthy. And talking to people from the Golden Knights organization, Krebs was excellent in the bubble, and there was a day where they thought he was going to play. They woke up in the morning, and there were a couple of injuries, and they thought he's going to go tonight. And then, as it happens throughout the day, whatever was tight or strained either loosened up or felt better, and he didn't get to play. But think about that. Pete DeBoer was, after, from watching what Krebs was doing in practice, was ready to insert him in the lineup in a playoff game. That is, he was close to getting on the ice in the playoffs. You have to think he's going to, when they have training camp, he's got a chance to come to training camp and win a job on the NHL roster.
And you'd think, too, Gary, the point of with a flat cap now, and with a lot of teams, this wasn't expected with everybody, right?
Yeah.
The necessity for certain teams to have younger, cheaper players, right? You've got a cost certainty with players for the first 3 years on their entry-level deals.
Yeah.
So if you're going to give Robin Leonard $5 million a year, and now you've got him on as part of your whole, how do you? It's the whole math equation.
Sure. Yeah.
How does that all fit into it? Well, part of it is Cody Glass, Peyton Krebs, Zach Whitecloud,
Nick Hague's going to have to play next year.
Right on down the line.
And I guess that is the other question. If how many of those younger players can come in, and they have to be impact players. They have to come in and really contribute. But if you get a guy that does what Zach White, if 2 or 3 of those kids come in and have Whitecloud or Waugh like seasons, boy oh boy, you got something good happening there. The word on the street right now, and this is the tease, Dave, is that Steven Stamkos has been asked by the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's got a full no move if he would waive it, and reportedly he has said, yeah, I'll waive it to go here or here. And one of the here's, some people are saying, is Vegas. Yeah, that could be fascinating.
It's amazing that, and we had Elliot Friedman on yesterday.
Yeah.
And he talked about if Alex Pietrangelo doesn't re-sign in St. Louis, he thinks he will sign in Vegas.
Yeah.
And the in 3 short years, the allure of playing in Vegas. So think about that.
Well,
rumors of Steven Stamkos, who just won a Stanley Cup with Tampa Bay, their captain, been there his whole career, potentially of being on the move, and one of the 2 places he said he'd go to is Vegas.
Yeah, and
Pietrangelo could end up in Vegas.
We have no interest. We have no.
It's just
no idea if Vegas has interest in. Well, of course, who doesn't have interest in Alex Pietrangelo or Steven Stamkos? If you're in hockey and you don't, you should probably be in soccer. Okay, whether or not you can make that happen, cap wise, et cetera, is another question. So. Well, let's break and let's come back and kick that one around a little bit.
We'll do that for sure. Nighttime at noon, Rock Creek Cattle Company. One final segment with Dave and Gary coming up on Fox Sports Las Vegas. Schmidt darting in, one-handed on goal save. Crawford, rebound, score! Not sure if it's going to count, I doubt it.
After video review, the puck was in the net before the net came out. The call on the ice is no goal due to goaltender interference.
Nighttime at noon from Rock Creek Cattle Company in Deer Lodge, Montana. We mentioned on the radio side, you heard a little Panama from Van Halen coming back, and sad news today, Eddie Van Halen gone, dying of cancer at the age of 65. Big night in the NHL with round one of the draft coming up later on. Of course, we'll have full coverage for you from 4 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. Shane Knighty will be part of our coverage. We're going to have some Golden Knights, by the way, kind of as our correspondents. Peyton Krebs, Nick Hague, Jack Dugan, Cody Glass, Ben Jones, all going to be involved when they pick players from certain regions, the OHL, NCAA, whatever.
Yeah, if they're guys they've played against, they can tell us, like, you know this from your own experience in sports. When you play against a player, you find out, oh, this guy can't go left. This guy hits like a truck. This guy doesn't like to go in the corners, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll have some. We'll be able to get some great analysis from these young men whose careers, junior careers or college careers, overlapped with the picks that are going on. We have a trade, Dave.
Yeah, what do you got, Lawman? Breaking news.
This is, to me, this is blockbuster-ish. Like Josh. So the trade is this: Josh Anderson leaves the Columbus Blue Jackets and goes to the Montreal Canadiens. Going from Montreal to Columbus is Max Domi and a third-round pick tomorrow in 2020, the 78th pick overall. So Marc Bergevin of the Canadiens is getting rid of Max Domi, who wasn't happy in Montreal for whatever reason, and a third-round pick in 2020, and Jarmo Kekalainen from Columbus sending Josh Anderson, who I have an enormous man crush on, to the Montreal Canadiens. I just think he's a fantastic player. He's big. Like, you remember, when Vegas plays Columbus, when Anderson is healthy, he is a problem. He moves reasonably well.
Yep.
He goes to the net. I just said hits like a truck. Well, he hits like a big truck. He hits like a 5-ton flatbed, not just your run-of-the-mill Silverado Chevy half-ton. He's got a little more jam. So that's a big maneuver. That's a hockey trade.
So, and Max Domi, it continues to
third team
now, right? Yeah. Arizona, then Montreal. Had a good year 2 seasons ago with the Canadiens. Had 28 goals. Had his best year in the NHL. Refresh my memory. So Anderson last year, and to your point, when they came into Vegas 2 years ago, he was the best player on the ice that night. Yeah. 2 seasons, 18-19 season, Josh Anderson, 27 goals, 47 points for Columbus. Injury plagued last year, 26 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, so just couldn't keep himself healthy.
It's one of those things you see in some players that play with that kind of weight, that play that heavy game. Will Carrier comes to mind. Will played every game this year. First time he'd ever done that. Will hits so much. Sometimes there's a hit and you're a little off balance and you have to say, is it worth taking the risk here? Or should I lay off a little bit and make sure I get to finish the game and the season? And Ryan Reeves is, a very durable guy, leads the NHL in hits over the last so many years by a massive margin. And the great Bud Grant once said to me, the number one quality in a professional athlete, durability. can't make the club from the tub. All of those expressions that are that circle around that. So some guys have to figure out, and some guys never do. You look at Wendell Clark, just kind of ran his body out of the business. A more recent guy, Mike Richards played that real hard game for a long time. Wayne Simmons has got lots of miles on him as well as a result of that style.
Yeah, sure. So a big trade with Anderson going to Montreal for Max Domi and the third rounder. I just wanted to double check, Gary. And I usually you're right on. I just wanted to make sure Bud Grant was.
He is.
He is. He's 93, but he is still with us.
You know how I know?
God love him.
I recently said in a tweet, Bud Grant once told me the number one skill in a player is durability. And you know who retweeted me?
Bud Grant.
Bud Grant.
He's 93 on Twitter?
He's on, oh my God, he auctions all of his basement full of memorabilia.
Like all the Viking stuff?
Blue Bombers stuff. He also played for the Lakers.
Yes.
Played pro basketball, played pro football, then was an icon in Canada in the Canadian Football League, and then came to the NFL and was a great coach. Took the Vikings to a couple Super Bowls, I believe.
Yep.
Lost them all.
Didn't win it, but got there.
No. Yeah.
So you learn something every day. I'm usually pretty good on my CFL info, or not. I never knew he coached the Bombers until today. But he did. You know this. 1957, he took over the job.
That is shameful.
And he was there for a long time. He
That.
coached that squad for 9 years or something like that. And he's, thankfully, still very alive and very well. Our coverage here, Gary, we should tell you, brought to you by Ahern Rentals. Over 54,000 pieces of rental equipment are available nationwide through Ahern Rentals, and it's ready to support your next project in construction, industrial, landscaping, and more. Ahern Rentals, Vegas-born since 1953. So we've got a big day here at Rock Creek. First round of the draft, full coverage for you starting at 4 o'clock Pacific, 4 to 8, 98.9 FM. Darren Millard will join us from back in Vegas. Shane Knighty's going to be sitting between us and, of course, on all of our social media channels as well.
Hold on. Not today.
Well, where do you want to sit?
He's the left winger today. I have to play center on draft day.
Okay. How about if you just do the show?
Nope. Listen, you two don't have to be attached at the hip all the time. All
right?
Okay.
Well, you can rearrange the seating chart, and then we'll be here one way or another.
We'll put Shane in the middle.
A little bit later on
Let's
today.
be honest. He's prettier than me.
Yeah,
we'll put him in the middle.
That's true.
I think it's a bad decision.
Yeah, that's fine. It's a matter of we can talk about it. We'll chat about it as the day goes on. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, of course on 98.9 FM, we'll have it completely covered. And then we've got another. You're gonna have to be up relatively early tomorrow, Lawman. We have a full day of coverage tomorrow, rounds 2 through 7.
Yes.
Tomorrow. As well. So, but should be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to having some of the younger Golden Knights who are not too far removed from playing in junior or playing in college to give us their read on some of these players as well.
We will, we'll be able to go to Gary Bettman on. He's in this at NHL Network Studios. We'll be able to go to him for the picks. Then we'll fade him down. We'll come back. You and I will talk about the pick. We'll have guests. We've got some people lined up to join us, and we're gonna have a real good time tonight talking about the first round, and then tomorrow, all of those rounds. That's when the real broadcasting, tap dancing comes to the fore, and you better be ready to go.
Get your dancing shoes on.
There you go.
Darren Dreger, Chris Johnston, Scott Burnside also expected to join us here,
and others.
This
little baby's got a few numbers in it.
It's got sparks coming out of it.
We'll get to work.
Join us back here again, 4 o'clock Pacific for round 1 of the NHL draft coming up. But goodbye for now. Later on this evening, nighttime at noon on Fox Sports Las Vegas.